everyone, I am Geraldine S. Makaputol from SBI 1B, and for today's video, I'm going to share my thoughts or insights about the book that I have read entitled as Out of Our Minds by Ken Robinson. But before that, I have a brief explanation first about the author who wrote that book, then afterwards, I will explain my thoughts chapter by chapter for you to be able to understand it. So let's start. So Sir Ken Robinson was a British author, speaker, and international advisor on education in the arts to the government, non-profits, education, and arts bodies. He was a director of the Arts in Schools project and also a professor of arts education at the University of Warwick. He was born on March 4, 1950 at Liverpool, United Kingdom. He died on August 21, 2020 last year, and based on my research, the cause of his death was cancer. So now let's move on to my insights about the content of his book, chapter by chapter. In chapter 1, it simply tackled about the introduction of the book itself. So, creativity is generated by our minds, and it can be associated with our expression, thoughts, feelings, moods, and there are instances where you'll play with your ideas and have fun to produce something. Creativity comes in many different ways, but the most common way is that doing what you enjoy, and if there is enjoyment, of course, there is fun. And if there is fun, there are various ideas that may comes in your mind which can produce a lot of things which we call creativity. In chapter 2, Facing the Revolution. So in this chapter, change is fast. Modernization of technology is never ending due to some changes how people do things that includes how the person communicates or relates to his or her environment. But in our current mindset, we are stuck in the old ways of doing things instead of learning new things from new methods that we can use. So, since we are sticking to the old ways, we people sometimes feels like we're left behind or being alienated. So, in order to understand new things, one has to meet them, understand what it is, recognize the cultivating natural power of imagination, creativity, and innovation. However, it is not an option, but an urgent necessity in order to adopt the new world, which we always call tomorrow. In chapter 3, Trouble with Education. Majority of the people think why they are not creative is due to education. As I mentioned in chapter 1, creativity is generated in many various ways and how people think, which I mentioned there. Fun should be always be involved to trigger someone's mindset to generate something unique. However, in this chapter, it mentioned there that there are dominant forms of education that can actively stipule the conditions that are essential to creative development as the world matures and modernizes. Educational system throughout the world is being reformed. However, these reforms almost always focused on improving the existing system. So in that way, there are some people having difficulties with their creativity because they are worried if they should stick to the instructions since that's how things work in education, or will they follow their guts, mood, enjoyment, and etc. to create or generate something. In chapter 4, Academic Illusion. The scale of change is creating a huge shift on how people live and earn their lifestyle that includes people should reach these academic standards. In order to earn this much or in order to get hard, but those alone will not solve the problems. Because in order to move forward, we need something fresh, something new, ideas, creation, and system. So in this chapter, it clearly states that human intelligence is the capacity for academic activities, but that doesn't entirely mean that academic activities is the whole education itself. So in order to educate people in the future generation, one must see through the academic illusion from their real abilities and how these different types of abilities, or rather elements of human capacity, enhance. In chapter 5, Knowing Your Mind. Human intelligence is very rich. Appreciating and believing the potential of human intelligence is very important to understand the true nature of creativity. Why? Because creativity is formed through human intelligence. However, not all humans are the same. Even with all that education, training, and most will never discover what their real capabilities are. So we have to understand the range and variety of our capacity. Hence, this way we can turn it into reality. So this is where the idea of creativity centers its significance. Chapter 6, Being Creative. This chapter focuses on what creative really means. However, in my own opinion, it is a process to produce ideas for business, education, or inventions. Creativity is about making dynamic connections to ideas in order to produce something unique results. But there is a downside to this, since not all people simply has that power to produce something, but the truth is that they haven't learned or practiced something yet. They have to do those in order to have a basis of they want to generate of what they want to have as a result. Creativity is human, and there are a lot of ways of seeing, thinking, and doing something. Chapter 7, Feeling Better. So creativity is not always produced from education. Instead, it comes in different ways, and it may also draw on all areas on human consciousness that includes emotions, knowledge, skills, experience, and lots more. Creativity can also come unconsciously because there are instances like you're not thinking about anything, then this something, or I mean idea, just suddenly pops up in your head. So what did you notice? There is a big connection between creativity and human consciousness. However, educational systems sometimes contradict the idea or creation, but it doesn't mean that it is bad. Or maybe it just to prevent the materialization or development of creativity. Chapter 8, You Are Not Alone. Notice this. Human cultures is the fruit of every human creativity. Without it, we humans don't have any culture. Due to the achievements of our ancestors, cultural conditions, and thinking they managed to produce this wonderful result. So when we say culture, it purely means community's overall way of life. So it means that human culture is produced by not just one, but two or more people. So for example, when we say Filipino culture, it includes our art or creations, political power, responsibilities, and lots more. In addition to those, human culture is not entirely based on us because it is shaped by lots of factors. A good example is geography, events, conquest, history, war, and etc. So understanding those interactions will come clear idea of how the community evolved over time to make sense. Chapter 9, Being a Creative Leader. So in this chapter, for me the main topic there is that organization talk a lot more about innovation than creativity. And as stated there, It is a distinction between the two. There is what the author called the three process of culture of innovation. The first one is imagination, the ability to bring the events into mind and the ideas that is not currently present in our senses. Second is creativity, the process of having original ideas that have value. And the last one is innovation, the process of putting original ideas into practice. So for me, I believe this three process is accurate and it is straight answer and at the same time it is the simplest way to explain the process. There is not going around it. It is what it is if you really wanted to produce something. The last chapter, learning to be creative. Well, for me, creativity is just literally come to some people, not just through arts or crafts. Creativity is not just about those. Creativity can also be produced for work and education, but without human intelligence, creativity is nothing. In education, creativity can also be used since you get to learn new things. Hence, new things can help you produce new ideas. It also implies in disciplines, same with math and science. Through them, you can produce something new. Creativity is purely possible in every discipline and should be promoted throughout the whole education system. In every aspect in our lives, there is creativity. Some might misunderstood creativity, but no matter what we do in our daily lives, there is always a creativity involved. Why? Because no matter what we do, we have intelligence, and with intelligence, we produce ideas that that I can say that is equal to creativity. And that's all for my thoughts or insights about the content of the book entitled as Out of Our Minds by Ken Robinson. Thank you.
Do that one dance, baby. That one dance.